Yeah.
Yeah, so we probably are fine.
Well, no, but I wasn't recording my side either because I'm
Oh,
just
you were.
as.
That's what I was saying. Okay.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was totally.
Recording.
I'm
We're
sorry.
all we're all messy today.
Recording.
Recording.
All right, I'm
Happy
starting
Friday,
over.
everyone.
Do over. It
2016.
it is Friday. Never mind. Everyone knows it's Friday.
Sorry.
It is
Sorry.
January 26, 2016. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to talk about where Apple should make their damn computers, how Google should make their damn apps, and virtual reality, because why not? This is the iMore Show. Joining me this week, second time around, Serenity Caldwell. How are you, Ren?
Hello. As I said the first time, I am recovering from being sick, so I may be a little stuffy today, but otherwise I'm doing pretty well.
You on a stuffy day, Serenity, are better than most people on their best day.
We'll see.
We're in good hands. Also joining us, she put Candy Crush down for an hour to join us, Georgia Dow. How are you, Georgia?
It's Friday. Sorry.
So I'm actually in the Winnipeg office. I'm standing in the office of Kevin Mitchelluk right now with his Quentin Tarantino homage and his, according to Georgia, serial killer light on a Lex Friedman-style treadmill desk. And the people in the office are doing Blazer Fridays, which I've never heard of. They're all wearing blazers today.
That's weird.
Usually it's
I
like
feel
Casual
left out.
Friday, right?
Yeah, Blazer Friday.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. Must be like it's like The Simpsons where they have Hat Day at the nuclear factory and someone's just guzzling, another person's just cleaning their weapons. It's if I don't make it out of here, you guys know where I will my last coordinates.
Yep.
We'll carry on the show for you, Renee.
All right, I appreciate it. All right, so let's get right into it. Ren, what is Apple up to now?
Well, gosh, Apple is doing constant things, but specifically, if we're talking about Apple's ventures into virtual reality, they're taking a look at hiring some folks in virtual reality. They're actually, according to the Financial Times, hiring a virtual reality researcher to kind of expand and explore the avenues of virtual reality. To which I say, this is not a surprise. There are plenty of people working on VR inside Apple. This also doesn't mean that Apple's releasing a VR set in the next 6 months. I know it's the popular thing to do right now. Everybody and their mother is like, VR! But Apple being Apple, Apple likes to wait, Apple likes to see, Apple likes to methodically plan to make sure that whatever they release is not going to be, useless.
It's so exciting though. Like we got to try the Oculus at CES last year, and
It's so much fun.
yeah, it's getting better and better. And now there's the Vive, there's the HoloLens, there's still Georgia tried Google Glass. And this has got to excite you, Georgia, right? You can play Candy Crush like immersively.
In 3D. There's not enough Candy Crush.
Oh
Candy
my
Crush in
God.
3D would just be so much better than the regular Candy Crush. I'm excited. I'm hoping that we're going to get some sort of little, some sort of glasses that we can stick with our iPhones so I can look ridiculous like everyone else that's out there. It doesn't mean that we're really going to be getting something, but you know what? That's where the things are going, and I think that being able to be more immersed in your phone is only a good thing. Maybe not that good of a thing, but I want it.
Could this be for the Apple car, so that you're in the Apple car, it's driving you, and instead of showing you a disgusting highway around you, it's showing you beautiful pastures and orchards and animals?
Boy, that sounds like a really dangerous proposition.
That's like the worst idea. Yeah, that's a really bad idea. So
Well,
if the
like
Apple car is bringing you somewhere you don't want to go, you won't know.
Well, like instead of the train passing by, it's like a dragon flying by. I mean, just think of the potential.
Oh boy.
It could be terrifying.
I'm excited. I think Serenity's actually right. Like, Apple doesn't do chipsets; they do feature sets. So just because something like NFC exists or something like inductive charging exists, which we'll talk about later, it doesn't mean Apple's going to throw that chipset in there and just do the base the base solution for it. They try to think of, well, I don't care about contact, I don't care about radios, I do care about mobile payments. So what hiring these people and doing virtual reality work, maybe they'll make a headset like Oculus one day, but maybe it'll be in the car, or maybe it'll be in a Geordie LaForge visor. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting to me because Doug Bowman is primarily, you think about Apple's sort of prior ventures into VR, and it's all, small startup companies. Doug Bowman's been a researcher and a professor for a long time at Virginia Tech, and he's a very, very smart guy, and has done some really interesting things with virtual reality, and is actually one of the first people to get a HoloLens grant, so that he could explore what the HoloLens could do. I don't know. I think this is Apple exploring. This is Apple saying, again, we want the A-level people in the room to tell us what we don't know about this, and to tell us where we could go wrong this. Sounds like typical Apple, exploring avenues and saying, let's see if this is actually a good fit for our company and whether or not we can do something to actually move the needle and not just release a product to release a product.
Although they did buy that, the company that made the original Kinect hardware, and they now got the VR guy. So I'm just going to put it out there: Pippin 2, VR Boogaloo.
I have to say, I would really love a Kinect-style bar for my Apple TV after having to try and play Just Dance now with the remote in the hand while trying to dance. No.
Yeah. I got to beat Georgia at Superman again on some gaming system.
We can try that out. We'll make it a thing.
All right, so Georgia, for the last while, you've been giving me nothing but battery indicator complaints, and you were not happy about it.
Now, so here I am. I'm using my phone, and it tells me I'm at 40%. I'm all happy. The day is good. And then suddenly, my phone is off, which is stressful because I'm in the middle of Candy Crush, of course. And I didn't expect it, and I may not be anywhere where I can have my phone charged. And so this is a much bigger issue, I think, than Apple is leading it out to be. Because say that you're on the road or you're driving or there's someone that you need to connect to, you might not have a charger and you don't know that your phone is dead. So what happens is that the battery percentage does not change. It gets fixed at a certain number and kind of stays there. So I don't check my phone. I actually work during the day, and I don't check my phone very often. And so I will, and I have been able to look at whatever it says on my phone and believe it to be true. But this has not been the case. So I've been left out in the middle of Booneyville with my phone completely dead, and unfortunately I didn't even have a charger on me. And the worst part to this is that I found out that the reason that this is happening is that if you are changing time zones when traveling, there's a small bug which kind of fixes your battery percentage on it. Now, for me, it's not because I'm changing time zones. The reason for me that this has happened so often is because when I'm playing Candy Crush, you use up, I know this is so sad, you use up a certain number of lives, and then you have to wait like 30 minutes, an hour until you get more lives. So if I change the day, I change it to one day forward and then open up the application and then change it back a day after the app has been open but the game not being played, I get my lives reset. And so there we go. It's because of Candy Crush that my phone has been freezing. And so, yeah, I know. There is a good fix for it if it's happening to you. And if you're playing Candy Crush or changing time zones, it might be a good idea to do this. Anyways, you only have to do this once you've changed, is go to Settings, General, Date and Time, and you can then, take a look at dealing it, reboot your phone and check it. But don't switch around the phones if you're your phone playing Candy Crush if you're in Booneyville without a charger. Just wait the lives out instead of, switching around the date and time.
Well, it's a bug. So it is a real bug. The bug
lives.
is that if you don't let the phone automatically manage time, and you start doing it manually, the battery percentage stops working. So that is a bug that they have to fix. Mm-hmm. You are bringing this on yourself because you're doing it all the time for Candy Crush, which most people wouldn't do. But I mean, that's not your fault. That should work if you do it.
It's not my fault.
So at least we know what's happening. So if you, like Georgia, would rather cheat time than pay money for freemium games, just make sure you reboot afterwards.
I would totally pay the money if I had unlimited lives. I'm just saying.
Just pay $100 and then that'd be done.
So very nice. All right, so this is just funny. So professional Twitter troll Donald Trump did an interview where he said he'll make sure Apple makes their damn computers in the U.S. Now, I'm not an expert at parsing language, so he might have meant just the damned ones. Like the ones that aren't damned, that's fine. They can make those anywhere. But the ones that are going to go to hell, they got to be made in the U.S.
It already makes the Mac Pro in the U.S., and I feel like of all the computers, that is probably the most damned, given its jet black soul.
But this is super interesting because we've talked about this before, and it's such a multi-factor thing. Just to name a few, definitely labor is far cheaper in China. They've also got generations of investment in the kind of technical skills that you need to do this level of assembly, and they've also got all their facilities in one place, really close together. So if there is a problem, you can just drive between buildings and fix them, and not fly across countries to various factories in various states. But Georgia, you've had interesting opinions on this in the past. Let's put it that way. What do you think?
Well, I I'm fully ready to go. Like, Apple, how dare they, spend a little bit more money, cut your profit margins, and be able to do this. I would be fully on board with doing that. I feel like, I love Apple, but I don't mind throwing it under the bus if it deserves to be thrown under the bus. Unfortunately, in this case, there is truly no bus throwage that is warranted, because though it would cost in China about $8 to produce an iPhone, it does cost about $8, and 65 more in manufacturing in the States. So we're talking about a difference in profit margins, which would be very minimal when they make about, depending on the phone, around $250 in profit. So it wouldn't really cut down to them. It wouldn't really cut down in us if we carried that cost over. Spending $50 more for a phone that's 600 plus is still not a huge deal. But the problem is that there's huge issues in the supply chain. So if you have most of all of your supply chain in China, it creates a huge logistical challenge in order to have all of that moved to the States. It would make Apple have to pay a huge premium in taxes, which I think that, bless you, which I think would be perfectly, it was cute. It was cute, which is, completely warranted. But that's a difference between 2% and 35%, and you do owe it to the people that are your shareholders to make sure that you are increasing profitability. It is a company. But I think that the biggest thing is the amount of workers that you would be able to get in the workforce is a huge difference. So in China, they could fire thousands of people per day and then rehire them. And because we've already sent most of our manufacturing jobs overseas, we don't have the workforce to be able to truly manufacture something. Plus, the workers in China are just much hungrier. They will work overtime, they will stay late, they live on site, and no one here would be able to do that. And so I think that it's one of these things that it's now at an impossibility with people that are not skilled at doing these jobs anymore because there aren't the jobs here to do them. And so this is probably something that is going to be increasingly something outsourced, not coming back here. And it isn't really about the money, because to Apple it's not a huge, the taxes probably would be, but for the actual cost per iPhone it's not a big deal. But we just don't have the labor force in order to be able to produce. Yeah. The trained and the trained at a lower certification, so you don't have to pay them the same amount. And so it's just one of these things that it's an impossibility.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Georgia here, and also during Fireballs, John Gruber wrote a great takedown on this, as did Recode, where it does not make sense, any kind of sense, for Apple to move its the manufacturing that it does, back to the States because of what Georgia said. Because there's no possible way, for one thing, if we were even able to get manufacturing up to a decent wage, how are we going to manufacture 70 million iPhones in the space of a quarter? I mean, I was reading John's piece earlier, and it's something along the lines of, what did he say? He was like 10 iPhones a second or something. Yeah, 10 iPhones, a million iPhones a day, 10 iPhones a second. We don't have the factory capability right now to do that. And to build the factory capability to do that might take 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, you think about the Mac Pro, and you think about the U.S. manufacturing factory that Apple has built for the Pro, and has worked on to get those computers made pretty much entirely in the United States. That is a small company. It's like, that's a small factory. They're about 50,000 Mac Pros, and yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
There's also an international way of looking at this too, and that is, like, China is an increasingly important market for Apple. Mm-hmm. India is going to be. Does it matter to someone in Germany whether the computer is made in the U.S. or China? Does it matter to someone in China whether it's made in China or the U.S.? I understand Apple was founded in America, but Apple's becoming a global company. And if I didn't want to buy any computers that weren't made in Canada, I would be sitting here totally unconnected from the world right now. I'd have my BlackBerry in a dream, basically. So I think it's just another sign that not everyone is paying attention to the global scale of manufacturing and technology anymore. Oh, the Donald.
Oh, so, the Donald.
I kind of wish that Gary Busey was the Democratic nominee because the seasons of Celebrity Apprentice where they had Busey and Trump were just the best. And I think we're missing out on some magic there.
Yeah, probably. That's hilarious.
So Serenity, Apple launched a brand new iOS app, and you took it for a spin.
They did. So on Wednesday, Apple launched Music Memos, which is basically a combination between voice memos and GarageBand for people to record snippets of songs or test songs, little ideas, germs of thought into this beautiful app called Music Memos, which then automatically chord tabs your song, whether you're playing on a ukulele or you're playing on a guitar or you're playing on a piano. It automatically figures out the chords for it and offers you optional bass and drum backing as a way to fill out and flesh out the song. You can change the key, you can change the tempo, you can change where the drum is hitting on the upbeat. You have a limited selection of bass and drums to kind of choose from to tweak your playing accordingly. But I was able to make like half of a song in 30 minutes, where I was taking a couple of different chords on my ukulele, and I was just playing like, D minor, B flat, and A minor, or something like that. And I'm just like strum, 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 and I did 3 other chords and 3 other chords. And voice memos is cool, because it automatically breaks up when you segment. So like if you've been playing 3 chords, and then you stop for a second and you decide to change to a different 3 chords to see how that might sound, it actually intelligently knows that you've finished playing one section of song, and it saves it as that section of a song, and then starts a new recording of second section of a song, which is something that I've wanted in voice memos for years. The fact that we have it in music memos is super exciting.
So I had no idea when I first heard about this, and it went live. I was talking to you about it, and I said, why would they do this? Because Apple has limited resources. There's all sorts of things we want them to do, like fixing the full screen podcast video playback on the iPad, please. And they're devoting resources to making a new app. And you sort of explained it to me in one person.
Yeah, I said two words, Apple Music. Because, well, no, I actually said 2 words, Taylor Swift.
Yes.
but Apple Music is the big thing here. Taylor Swift and Ryan Adams, both of whom have gotten named this year because of their varying 1989 albums, they both use voice memos to record snippets of their songs, and in fact have publicized that they used voice memos. Then elsewhere, we have people complaining about how hard it is to get music into Apple Music Connect. Artists who want to share kind of unfinished tracks and stuff like that, but just don't have a good avenue. Apple saw both of these things, I think. Saw the fact that some very high-profile musicians were using voice memos, which is not a very good music-related app to make music, and then also they were using, they were having trouble getting stuff into Connect, and it's like, maybe we can solve one problem with another one, to quote Hamilton, and they kind of merged this together. So they have this beautiful voice memos app, which not only seamlessly transfers to GarageBand, but also has a one-touch upload to Apple Music Connect if you have a compatible Connect account. I'm really waiting. Go ahead, Georgia.
So are you saying that what Apple did was they said, we're going to at least please Taylor Swift, and who cares about everyone else with fixing Apple Music?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't necessarily think it's about fixing Apple Music. It's about making Apple Music more appealing to artists.
Not me.
Yeah, right. not the end user. Well, but here's
so they can make more music that I can't find.
Yep.
Okay.
They need to make sure that they have the artists before they can fix the consumer end, which sucks. I hate this. I hate that this is a thing. But the fact of the matter is, one of the reasons why kind of Spotify is winning right now is that their new Discover playlists and their new algorithms that they're working on for their version of For You is really awesome. And on top of that, and so right now what Apple has going for it on the Apple Music side is exclusives and is making artists happy. And that's something they've been doing for years, since the early versions of iTunes. But I don't think that excuses the fact that Apple Music still needs some dire reworking in the next few months. Please, God, I hope so. Because there's this month I've been a huge champion of Apple Music. I really like Beats One. I really like a lot of the stuff that it has to offer. when I was considering, I'm cutting down on finances so I can save a little bit of money, and I was definitely being like, I don't know if I can have both a Spotify subscription and an Apple Music subscription, and maybe I just want to subscribe to Spotify.
Yeah.
I don't
Because,
think I've even opened Apple Music in a month. Like I did, and then I couldn't find where where the music was saved that I just purchased, and I went, you know what? No,
Yeah.
no.
But you know what? If you don't like listening to music and you like making music, Music Memos is really, really exciting for anybody, whether you're a professional musician or whether you're like me, who like I love music, but I'm, very much an amateur, pretty much on all levels. But Music Memos gives you a good base to start off for a song and gives you kind of places to experiment and play with. The only thing that I wish it had was multi-track support. Right now, it's just you can only record your either if you're recording vocals, it's just vocals, or if you're recording a ukulele or a guitar line or a piano line, it's just that. You can't overlay vocals, despite the fact that it does this beautiful thing where it just loops the song over and over and over again. And what I really would love to be able to do is, while that song is looping, record a second successive memo that's like doing testing with lyrics and various things. Yeah. I love the
looper
looping.
app.
The looping idea is great.
Like everyday looper.
But yeah, and transferring it to GarageBand was actually really simple. So there are options. It's really fun. I had a blast testing it.
And they didn't stop there. They released a new version of the Logic Remote, and they also updated GarageBand for iOS to bring some of the features from the desktop GarageBand, including the drummer live loops, which is really cool. All I just heard was uns, 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 because it dance music. But there was a lot in there. I mean, especially for an iOS app. And we finally got iPad Pro compatibility and
oh my god,
compatibility.
GarageBand is so much nicer on my iPad Pro now that I have iPad Pro compatibility. I do want to share. This is not a GarageBand thing, but I want to share this because it was delightful. I found this yesterday. It was being shared online. And I'm just going
to... As long as it's not us singing.
No, it is not. It's not Sia's song.
Siri, what is 1 trillionth to the 10th power?
Cogitating. The answer is 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 0
So
that's adorable.
Isn't that amazing?
Adorable. That's great.
That made me so happy yesterday when I found
Siri
that.
rap that instead of last week's rap from Siri, this is a much better one.
a little bit different Siri beatboxing. But that's basically instead of having 3 college students in your phone, Music Memos does something very similar, except without Siri going 0 0 0 0 0 0, which actually I wouldn't mind as a loop. Might record that into GarageBand.
This is the one that Georgia and I were thinking of, and this is like I think iPhone 3G time.
A long time ago, yeah.
Mhm.
I'll just skip ahead.
No sound.
Yeah, it's really funny to watch it without sound.
Oh, it's not playing the sound? That's the worst. Google Hangouts. Okay. Hang on one second. Let's see. I think I can actually fix this. You know why?
Hey, do you want me to play it on my phone?
No, I got it. I've got it on the phone. I'm just gonna fast forward it. Let's just go a little bit into it. There we go. I missed the actual exciting part. Here we go.
It's pretty exciting.
So he's actually singing about ramen noodles in French, which is exciting. I would love Music Memos to do that.
Exactly. I feel like
I got it, and I tried to do something like that, and it did not end up anything as cool. It was really sad. I kept on pressing the wrong button and deleting stuff. It wasn't. It didn't end well.
One of the reasons why Music Memos is great is because it does the same thing that GarageBand, which is it intelligently snaps your song to a tempo. So if you're the worst, like most tempo challenged person in the world,
Are you looking at me? I think you're looking at me.
I am.
I'm looking broad. I'm looking vague.
Both of us.
I'm looking soft eyes, wide eyes. I'm specifically actually talking about me because while I have near perfect pitch, I have terrible tempo, which makes me an awesome singer, guys. So this actually allowed me, like it fixed, I play a selection of one of the tunes that I did.
Oh, yeah.
It fixed my ukulele playing so that it didn't sound nearly as off tempo as possible. And then when I was able to add the bass and guitar and all of that stuff, made it really fun. So this is just the ukulele right here, right? And then if I can add in the bass and the drums. Isn't that fun?
That's great.
It's just me playing the same 3 chords over and over again. And then what I ended up doing was I brought it into GarageBand on my iPad Pro, and I moved around some of the samples so that some started before others, and then essentially just layered over a couple vocal tracks, kind of just like a tease. I was like very much. This is like a blues New Orleans song, apparently. This is what that sounds like with. So sick. So as you know, it allows you, because it's all on tempo, it allows you to vibe that much more accurately when you're actually layering stuff over, so it doesn't feel like you're, oh god, all of my samples don't quite line up, and now it just sounds like a cacophony of terrible.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely terrific, and it reminds me. I tweeted about this, and I want to write about it. That Apple, in the last year, they put out the Pencil, and I'm drawing more than I have in years. And now they've put out Music Memos, and you were saying it's giving you an excuse to do all this musical stuff again.
Yeah.
It's really accelerating creativity.
It is. It absolutely is. And that makes me really excited. People were like, oh, now I want them to do it for film. And I'm like, guys, iMovie on the iPhone 6s is actually pretty good for budding filmmakers.
Yeah.
I think people have kind of forgotten about just how awesome iMovie is because it hasn't gotten some major love yet lately. But on the iPhone, it's really pretty nifty. I do wish there were a couple more things. I really should write my iMovie wish list one of these days. But overall, I feel like they've covered the bases now. They've got a really good, easy music thing for musicians. They've got artists in the iPad Pro. They've got people who want to make films in iMovie and
now they
even
need
in the
video
camera
notes.
app.
Take a few shots and it storyboards it for you.
Yeah, there are a lot of good apps that do that actually.
Awesome. So exciting.
Good times.
The other thing that was coming up last year, Apple. Last year Qualcomm announced that they've managed to solve wireless charging through metal. For many years, other phones, I think 2009, the Palm Pre came out with inductive charging, but Apple hasn't offered it, and people are like, Apple's mean. But you actually couldn't do inductive charging through metal because metal is conductive. So it would just dissipate all the charge. Absolutely. Now, Apple could have chosen to go with something else.
Or it could have done it through the glass. I'm just saying.
From the front.
There's glass. Glass. I don't care. I wouldn't care.
Front-facing inductive charging, but you still have to get to the battery, and you probably don't want to shoot tons of electricity through the sensitive screen tissue. I don't know,
I don't
but
know.
they could have switched to a different material. They could have switched to plastic or to some sort of composite material, glass like in the iPhone 4. But they chose not to. They didn't think it was of high enough value. And Phil Schiller said, we just don't think, like back when he was talking about NFC, we just don't have a feature for it. And eventually they had Apple pay for it. But now that they've got this, I was just wondering if this means we're ready for wireless charging on the iPhone. Apple did do it on the Apple Watch, but they did it with ceramics. But Georgia, do you I mean, you've got an Apple Watch. Would you like to be able to charge your iPhone the same way?
I would. I finished the day. I'm tired. It's dark in the bedroom. I almost like throw my Apple Watch onto the little charging stand, and it just kind of sticks and hangs there, and it's really simple. And then I'm like busy fiddling with the lightning, and I'm trying to get it in, and I'm like, oh, and I just want to go to sleep. And so it would be nice just to place it on a platform, something that looks really nice and classy, and it just charges. And I would charge it more often if it was easier, because even at work I have a charger there, but I place my phone down and I would place it on the right platform. But that small action of having to find where the charger has fallen down, get it, fiddle with it, and put it in is more time than I have in between sessions to be able to charge my phone through the day. So if I could have an inductive charger at work, I could just place my phone down and it would be fabulous. And being charged so that I wouldn't be, stuck with the, Candy Crush battery issue being an issue. And that would be effortless. And I think that that's the nice thing about most Apple products, is that they work really well, with a small few caveats that don't. And I think that it would help people out throughout the day so that they would be charging their phones more often.
That's sort of the statement they gave with the Apple Watch. They were saying that when people were super tired and they came home late at night, or they woke up and they were still bleary-eyed, they didn't want them to have to find some little plug and have to fuss with putting it in. They wanted them to just be able to put it down, have the magnet do all the work. And Ren, that probably makes sense on an iPhone 2 by now.
Yeah, I mean, I almost didn't charge. Actually, I didn't charge my iPhone until about 5 a.m. last night, because I was so tired last night getting over my sickness that I basically plopped into bed and then put my iPhone down on the nightstand, but didn't actually take the time to charge. So when I woke up in the middle of the night, like, after sneezing, I'm like, oh no, my iPhone doesn't have any battery. So,
It saved you from checking Twitter, though.
Horrible thing.
Yep. Yep.
No, I've done that. It's been late, and all I have to do is reach down to the floor, feel around, find the cable, pick it up, plug it in, and I just haven't wanted to do it. And it's a plus, so I think it's going to be fine the next day anyway. But the pad, the Apple Watch, I never do that with. The pad is so easy to stick it on. It's not a panacea, because you still have to put the other end of the plug somewhere. So if you have one location, like an office or a bedroom, where you never move it, it's fine. But if you're traveling, you still got to plug in the other end, or you still got to move the desk drawer out to plug that in. And the other problem is, because it's easy to put on and off, so I know someone who did testing for another company on this, and they had to do a bunch of tests to make sure when people rolled over, their blankets didn't just knock their phone off the pad and they'd wake up and it wouldn't be charged. So there are some issues, but I think overall, also back then in the Palm Pre, they were saying it was 50% efficiency, which isn't good, but now it's close to 90%. And who knows what Apple can do with this technology. So I think the reasons for not doing it are falling away, and the convenience is starting to win out on this. Signature feature time.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so.
Serenity, what is happening with Google Docs? Why have they abandoned and forsaken us?
Oh, Google Docs. Well, so I went to the mystery hunt last weekend, the MIT mystery hunt, which is a cool little puzzle hunt where you basically get to run around and solve all kinds of crazy puzzles and cryptics and fun
We
things.
still have to do the puzzle room like that, Renee.
Yeah. Oh
That
man,
sounds like so much
I'll come
fun.
up to Montreal and do it with you.
We
Yeah.
have puzzle rooms here.
Yeah, we do. One just came to Boston, but I haven't tried it yet. But yeah, so I went to mystery hunt, and it was really fun, except for the part where I had to bring all of my devices, because the iPad Pro just does not work really well with Google Sheets for what I wanted it to do. So I ended up bringing my MacBook Air, which I really haven't touched in the last 2 months, my iPad Pro, and my iPhone 6s Plus. So I was carrying, and my watch. I was carrying all of the electronics for a weekend, and I forgot how heavy my bag is when it's...
That somewhat defeats the purpose.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
And the real frustrating thing is that the iPad Pro is actually perfect for a lot of the stuff that you do at Mystery Hunt and saves a lot of paper. Like, there are a lot of things where there are like PDFs of puzzles that you would, like, one example of a puzzle we solved was you had to take, like, 26 little tiny squares, and when you lined them up in the correct order, they formed like an old number, like a numbering system. So
Cool.
if
Cuneiform.
normally, yeah, exactly, like cuneiform, yeah. So normally you would have to print that out and cut it all up and move it. But on the iPad
Right.
Pro, it was really easy to just be like, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to move this here, I'm going to move this here, I'm going to move
Sweet.
this here, I'm going to draw this. And that was, much easier than it normally would have been. But when it comes to direct spreadsheets, which is how we catalog data, Google Sheets and Google's web presence leaves major areas to be desired. For one thing, Google Sheets is not optimized for the iPad Pro, which some people can roll their eyes at and be like, well, are that many people using the iPad Pro? And you know what? It's not that hard to fix to optimize screens, especially if you're already working on flexible design layouts, which you should be, because Apple's been telling you to work on it for the last 2.5 years as app developers.
It's also probably people who care about it the most because they're the productivity people.
Exactly. If you really want Google Docs to work. The other big thing about Google Docs is it's split up into 3 different apps. So you have Drive, which supposedly contains all of your Drive-related things. You have Docs, which contains just your writing stuff, and then you have Sheets, which contains just your worksheets, your spreadsheets.
Presentations too.
Yeah,
It's
your
nuts.
Oh yeah, and I didn't even include presentations because I never use it. But so anytime you try, if you open up something in the wrong app, for instance, we do a shared Google folder at the beginning of the hunt that has that automatically adds all of the puzzles as spreadsheets. I can only get to that on the iPad by first going to Google Drive because it doesn't show up in Google Sheets until after I've already opened it. So I have to always use 2 apps, and then once I get into Google Sheets, this is awful. I'll pull up my article here so you can see the extent of the horribleness of the screenshots. But essentially, on the iPad Pro, this is a problem that a couple different apps have. But when it's not optimized for the iPad Pro, essentially, when you connect a Smart Connector keyboard, the space taken up by the digital keyboard still stays there, but the keyboard's gone, so you just get this big gray wall, which is fun and all, except for the fact that on the iPad Pro it means you can only see 5 lines of text.
And it's funny,
so
it stands out because Microsoft has done such a good job of adapting.
So you look at that. Look at that. That is ridiculous.
Oh,
I get to see five lines of text on, the iPad Pro is a pretty big screen, and then I get this giant thing. And the worst part is, this is,
it's like
this
a
is
search.
the same. Yeah, it is. This is the same design as the iPhone, which on the iPhone it makes sense to have a separate bar for searching, or have a separate bar for entering text, because the cells are often really tiny and you can't see what you're typing. On the iPad Pro, I would like to just be able to enter in-cell text in the cell and not even worry about this silly little bar that comes up and takes up half the screen while I try and adjust a 2.
So one of the bigger problems here is that this is an example. This is sort of the consequence. This is the chickens coming home to roost for Google insisting on not doing an Apple-like UI, even when they're building for Apple's platform. And you can say what you want about Beats, but Beats is a very Android-y app on Android, and Google is not making iOS apps. And I think if they used the built-in, the stock UI stuff, they would get a lot of this behavior for free.
Yeah, I think a decent amount of this is them trying to build their own unique experience, which I'm not against. I mean, Tweetbot has done this to great success, but Tweetbot is still a good iOS citizen. Mm-hmm. It still obeys, the things about iOS that we like and enjoy.
The iOS laws.
Yeah, exactly. And the other big thing that irritated me specifically to the mystery hunt was that you can't on Excel and on Google Docs, the pretty common thing is if you enter in a formula in one cell, you could drag down to basically copy that formula, only do it line by line. That doesn't work on the iOS app. So when I was trying to do a formula basically to index into a word, I had to manually copy, paste. And after doing this about 3 times, I was just like, F it, and I went back to my computer. It just wasn't worth it wasn't worth the time. And that's the thing, I'm very stubborn on the fact that like the iPad Pro is only awesome if it's saving you time or equal, being as good as your laptop. it's not, you shouldn't be using it for things that take too much time or are too weird or too
It's a
awkward.
convenience platform.
Exactly, and it's why I don't podcast on the iPad Pro yet, because I tried it and it just doesn't work very well. So I said no. I'm going to continue podcasting on my iMac. It makes more sense because I can connect my fancy microphones to it, and it's not a big pain in the butt. But with something like Google Docs, it's really frustrating, and it's really frustrating because I've built so much of my work and some of my fun stuff around Google Docs that not being able to edit it is endlessly infuriating, and it makes me think about getting an Office 365 account and going with Excel, because all of those apps just got updated and they're beautiful and they work properly.
And the interesting thing too is, I mean, some people wrote back saying that Apple hasn't, like Apple just put out the iPad Pro update for GarageBand and the new Music Memos app. It's just a scaled-up iPhone app, and that's all true. And Apple, they own this stuff. They should have this stuff done day one.
Oh
but
yeah.
Those apps still work. So if Google Docs worked, that would be fine. I would be asking for the update, but basic functionality not working is worse than UI not scaling.
Yeah,
it does show though that it's just not a priority to them, and perhaps it should be, but it's just not. They're busy building their robot army.
Their Star Trek computer. All right, so we have plentiful stuff to talk about in terms of mailbag and follow-up. But before we do, we have a couple tips to share with you guys. Georgie, you wanted to talk about 3D Touch, your ancient enemy.
Yeah. Yes. So just get it to a page that I can show. So a lovely thing is that if you find, which I did, is that 3D Touch you have to press too hard in order to access it, and I barely touch my phone when I'm moving it around the screen. It's something that's really, really light, and so something that's lovely is being able to press down, there we go, and press down on the screen and make it really, really light, so that 3D Touch happens with just a very light pressure. And so what you can do is you can change your own pressure sensitivity. You can actually make it also harder, that you have to press harder on your screen, which seems scary to want to do that. But you can lower the 3D Touch pressure sensor by heading into Settings, then General, Accessibility, and then you'll see 3D Touch, and you'll get to choose between light, medium, and hard. And so if this is great for people that are dealing with difficulties, because maybe you're dealing with a disability, you're elderly, or just like me, you don't like pressing really hard on your screen, and it makes it a little bit more effortless. So yeah, you could say it's just because I have like girly fingers, but no, I don't want to press hard on my delicate iPhone screen, and it works really nice, and I use 3D Touch more because of it.
And if your name is Banner, then you can make sure you press really hard on puny iPhone.
Then you should really make sure it's light.
We have a tutorial on this, so I'll make sure I link that in the show notes. And I also, because there was time over the holidays, I finally got through Serenity's awesome two-factor authentication tutorial she put up. And I did two-factor when it first came out, and it broke everything. Like, I could not get into
really
Dropbox.
work.
No, I just never got the tokens. They just never showed up, so I could never log in. But so I waited a year, and I said, over the holidays, I'm doing this. And Serenity had everything. She had Dropbox and iCloud and Google. And I went through it, and I installed Authy, and I've got Authy on my Apple Watch now, which is awesome because I can look at the token on my Apple Watch and put it in on my iPhone. And Ren, I feel both convenient and secure now.
Yay! I'm glad.
So I'm going to link that up too, because that was an excellent excellent walkthrough. So
Thank you.
And you really need two-factor because it's not getting safer out there.
You do. Absolutely.
You should do it and follow through, because it's, this might be scary for you, especially if you haven't done it and you've heard horror stories about other people having their phone not work or weird things happening, but Serenity walks you through it really simply with every single step. So go ahead and try that out for your own security.
And you feel like a total badass because, like, you go to a web browser, you log in, suddenly your watch goes boom, and there's a code there, and you put the code in, and it's like you're walking through, I don't know, Minority Report or something.
Without the gloves.
Yeah.
So some follow-up. We got some follow-up from KVNA808 on Twitter, and he said, Georgia, Rene, Serenity, on the latest iMore show, I'm hoping night mode can be disabled because I work at night and sleep during the day.
Yes, it can. You're safe and sound. There's even a custom time schedule that you can implement night mode for. so
So
that
you can
it.
make day mode.
No,
Yeah.
which wouldn't really work. That if your house is really exceptionally dark, I guess that you could work that through. But really, you shouldn't
The
be. You should
vampires
try
start
not to do. Right, exactly. You should try vampire mode. You should try not to be working shift mode. But for those that have to, you can turn it off, so you don't have to worry about your screen going all yellow if you do not want it to. And you can also change the yellowness of the screen. So.
Yeah, it's nice. I know I want vampire mode really badly. See what I did to myself here.
Red
All right, so we
screen.
have another question. This is from Floating Bones in the comment section from our last podcast, and he wants to know if you, or he or she, I'm sorry, I shouldn't assume whose bones are floating. If you could ask one question on the January 26, 2016 earnings call, if you could ask Tim Cook one thing, he's assuming, because he sort of feels, or she sort of feels, that the questions get wasted. Like certain people always ask about an Apple television, for example. The whole question is blown. So if it was up to us, Georgia, if it was up to you, if you were up first and Tim said, "Ha, this is Tim," what would you ask?
No, I would ask something ridiculous. You don't want me at. There's a reason why I'm not on these calls. I shouldn't be on these calls. I would be like, "What's up with my glowing iPhone logo?" I'd be like, "When am I going to get an iPhone that I can drop in the toilet and not have to worry about? Where's my holodeck?" Like I would just be ridiculous. I'd probably actually, if I really had to ask him a question, it would have nothing to do with any Apple product. I would want him to know what he wants his legacy to be, what are his hopes for the future, where does he see Apple going, and what impact does he want to put onto the world. That would be the things that I'm really interested in, and what would be, what are the changes that he hopes to see in like culture and that. So it would be these grand scheming questions that no one but for other psychotherapists and humanitarian kind of things would really care about. So
Nice. What about you, Ren?
Oh boy, I don't know if this would be on the call specifically, or just like hanging
earnings
out with
call,
him.
right?
Yeah, exactly. But I would ask him about diversity in Apple and what's going on with that, and how specifically he's working to get more ladies and more folks of color and everything into the specifically the higher ranks. Because I've worked at the Apple Store level. I know friends who are engineers, and there's a pretty diverse low base that's growing. But I would really, really like to see more ladies and more folks of more different minorities in leadership positions, because there are a lot of smart people.
Yeah, it's worth talking about too, because it's one of those things where I feel like it's Jed Bartlett's next 10 words, where we want more diversity, but how does Apple systematically create that? Because just saying it's never enough. The next 10 words, how do they do that? And it feels like the board is easy. Like you could change the board overnight. I say this as someone who has no idea what actual board procedures are, but boards have turned over overnight. So, and I feel like that's something Apple could do to absolutely show everybody that they're serious about diversity, is just decide next week we are going to. The whole board is done. We're reappointing a new board that is going to represent our customer base. The executives are harder because Apple is an old company. It was founded 40 years ago by two white guys in a garage. And if Apple was founded last week, the makeup of their senior staff would be profoundly different. I mean, not 100% sure about that, but based on other companies that have founded recently, the makeup would be entirely different. So how do you take executives who've been working there 20 years, 30 years? Do you double the executives? Do you remove some because diversity is more important than the institutional knowledge that those people have? That's the really hard question, but that's the thing I think Apple has to start looking at, because you look and you've got one Arab Israeli, you've got one white woman. You've got Eddie Q, who's of Cuban origin, and then you have people who are mostly they're mostly white male. Of course, Tim Cook is gay, but you've got people who are mostly European white descent, and solving that is going to be one of the most painful things Apple has to do. I have no idea how they do
I don't know
that.
if it's going to be painful. I don't think it's going to be painful. I think that they just have to open the doors to be able to, start promoting diversity is one of the most important things that they can do, by putting more women onto the stage, letting people know that that's what they're wanting to hire, let them, release things, and then start taking a look at, spending money at making sure that, tech is promoted to men and women. Because the problem with diversity is that fewer women, if you don't see someone, you don't think that that's something that you can do. And I think that a lot of people that are white males don't understand that, because white male are in every single field and everywhere that they see. And so the promotion of understanding that this is something possible for me as well, which can often be lost upon people that are of the majority, is vastly important, in that they can do to promote and help, and then the space is there for them to be able to get the jobs.
And we know people who are like, Apple has organizations within the company, like there's women Apple employees, and there's the African American employees group at Apple, and they meet and talk about these issues. And we've talked to people previously who are now back at Apple, so I won't name them, who actually tried to make sure that women were involved in the hiring process. And you have to do that for women and for every ethnic group that you want to promote. It's not just enough to say we want these people. The entire culture has to be based around it, and that's the only way. It's better for the customer. You get better products in the end. It's entirely a win thing.
Well, you don't. You don't see things from a different light unless you're understanding to that. We were talking about the Jessica Jones podcast, and someone was talking about how, and we were talking about women and how that's great, and people that are dealing with, stress and anxiety, and then someone said but no one out of any of these superheroes is overweight, and how does that make us feel that, overweight people cannot be superheroes? And I thought, what, that is one aspect I didn't look at it to, and so the wonderful thing about diversity is that you make better products, which then you can sell to a wider variety of people. So diversity equals more money.
Yeah. So again, for me, I'd love to see Apple just make it make a move by changing the board, because I think that's a very visible, and that's something that can be done. The executive committee, that I don't know how you approach. The executive team, I don't know how you approach that, but the board seems like it's something that.
For sure.
You cannot just fire everyone.
Yeah.
It's
tough,
not the answer.
But it has to be done.
Well, we're talking about it, so that means that that's a big difference already.
Mailbag. And we'll follow up on the diversity thing because it's important. This is a technical question. Why didn't Apple utilize the Safari UI web view option in the Apple News app? It's their own app. Use the feature. I really depend on the Safari Reader option for vision issues, and I have to do extra clicks to get the Open in Safari option. It seems unnecessary.
I agree. But I also think that News is not quite fully baked yet.
Yeah, so my guess is that News was what they call like a special project at Apple, which means almost nobody knows about it, which is why it's not integrated with things like the Siri screen on the -1 home screen. And it's entirely likely that the people making the Safari View controller had no idea that News people existed, and vice versa. And then it goes back to that old Guy English article where the guy's like, "Don't you people talk to each other?" And no, they don't. They're not disclosed.
No, they really don't.
Big company.
So now that they know each other exists, they're probably all working on making things better, but that's one of the prices Apple pays for their secrecy.
Mm-hmm.
Sad.
But necessary.
Last mail one. This is from Isabel. She says she can't see her Mac on her iPad AirDrop list. She can see this happens to me a lot. You can see everything else, but you can't see your Mac. And what I ended up doing, and I don't know if it's the same thing for you, Serenity, is I go to Finder and I put the Finder on AirDrop so that the Mac is broadcasting, and that seems to pop it up on my iOS device.
Yep, that's my recommendation too. Especially one thing is if you have an older Mac, it may not work at all if you have a pre-2012 Mac because they're on different AirDrop networks, which is kind of ridiculous, but there you go. But with newer Macs, my sort of must-use trick is to open up the AirDrop window, and it works.
Yeah, like we have an article that goes through all of these step by step, and I'll put that in the show notes. All right, so here is the Twitter Ask iMore. If you ever want to ask us a question, the easiest way possible, just hashtag Ask iMore on Twitter, or you can email podcast@imore.com. So this is a good one from Nick Garcia. How does the iPhone list the message contacts for 3D Touch? None of my most frequently used names are there.
Say that again, Rene.
So when you use the 3D Touch icon, he's expecting that the last
messages.
3 people he contacted are there. Yeah, and messages, and it's not.
I actually looked at this. So sometimes it does it for me. Like I'm looking at it now, and it says my last 3 people were you, my boyfriend, and Allie, and like that is true. But I've gotten people since then. My friend Sarah just sent me. So I'm not quite sure where it's pulling from. I once had when that tweet came in, I actually looked at my messages, and I had two different iMessage numbers for you, Rene. I had your iMessage, your email, and then I had your phone number.
I get that too. It's maddening.
So
I would assume it's an aggregate because I have the people that I've texted most within the last 24 hours. So I'd assume it would be like an aggregate of data because, like, I haven't messaged my husband recently. I messaged him yesterday, but it's one of the ones that are there.
So my understanding is that it works almost like Siri suggestions, where it's multi-factor, and it's based on your location, the time of day, and what it believes is your most common behavior. So even if you texted someone recently, if you more often than not text your husband when you are at the office and you happen to be at the office at that time of day, it'll preference
Oh,
that because that's your more usual behavior.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's
that
cool.
makes sense.
When it works.
That makes sense.
Does anyone actually use that? I totally don't use that. Like now that I can press so lightly, I should, but
I use it. I use it like for a lot of things. It's just, but I had to force myself to use it for a week, and then it became normal. Lady Danielle on Twitter wants to know any word on the podcast app for the Apple TV.
Didn't the podcast app come out with the latest beta?
I believe it is. I believe it's in the
Yeah.
latest beta.
I
Exciting.
believe that is true.
And I still think we'll see that, maybe not February, but definitely by March.
Soon.
James wants to know, as the Apple Watch is a first-gen product, where do you see it developing in the future? I think we did either the show before this one or the show before that. We did an entire segment on our wish list, so I can just link that unless anyone has anything new they've thought of. Yeah, I'll link that for you, James, because that's a really long discussion. I think we did it pretty well either last show or the show before that.
Yep.
Greg Wilson wants to know, Georgia, with the world markets going down, how can Apple still convince... Sorry, Georgia dropped out for a second. Georgia, with the world markets going down, how can Apple still convince people to spend $1,500 to $2,000 on a new phone when Androids are only $400? I would just point out beforehand that iPhones are probably around $1,000 maxed out, and Androids are probably around, you get them for like $100, $200 now, so it depends what country Greg is in.
Well, the thing is that they deal with it by doing quality over price. And so what you're dealing with is, one is people remember not how much a product really costs, how difficult it is, but they remember is how the product makes them feel. And Apple really markets to that. Apple works well, it's easy to use, it's a premium product, and so their high price range actually works to their advantage. Because when I walk out with a new MacBook, like I do, I hear the oohs and ahs. Can I see it? When I have the new phone, people are showing off, like to me, that they have the new phone. It's pink. Look at this. And so Apple works the fact that it's expensive. It works the fact that it's difficult to get to their advantage. If there was a huge, money shortage and we went through a huge recession, they could still work that for a good deal of time before people said, okay, the difference between an iPhone or being able to eat, I'm just going to keep my iPhone for a while. But with where the world economies are today, Apple's going to be able to market themselves as a premier product better than the rest. Whether that is true or not, people buy into it, and that's why people spend, like Apple or other big companies, spend billions of dollars in how to market, because they market the feeling, the use, the prestige, and then what does that mean about you? So if I'm using an Apple product, that means that, I might be in a certain demographic, I may make a certain amount of money, and so that works out really well for Apple. So I think that it's the opposite. I think that if Apple lowered their price range, I think that it might even hurt their market share.
Yeah, there's... The phone is one of the most important, it's probably the most important device for everybody now, and market has shown that people are willing to pay a premium for things that are that important to their life, and they care more about value than cost. So Apple has to make sure the value is there.
Yeah, plus they have the share program, so you can pay a certain amount of money per month and get a new phone every year. That's brilliant. I know. You save a ton of money, you get a new phone, and it's like $7 a month. It's almost nothing. And so who could say no to that?
Yeah, I want one of those programs.
No hand-me-downs.
Logan Westerman wants to know, the iPhone 7 is supposed to be thinner other than night mode. What other enhancements do you think we will see that will help battery life? The new processor is a gimme, but is there anything else Apple can do in a thinner phone to have even the same or improved battery life?
If they take away the headphone jack, they'll get a little bit more space for battery.
Boo! Hiss! Boo!
I mean, the processor makes efficiency. If they switch to OLED screens, especially if they have a consistent night theme, the way the Apple Watch does, that can save battery by not having to light up an LED. But right now, 3D Touch needs an LED, so who knows? And also, the power management they're doing now since the last iOS, since iOS 9, the power saver mode is really good, and it's possible that they can get even smarter with that and just turn off things when you don't need it, when you're not moving, when it detects that things aren't being used, and they could shift more to coprocessors. So I think they have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. I do not think they are lacking for tricks. So we started complaining. about this earlier. Let me skip that. Serenity, do you know if the Apple Pencil charges, this is from Mickey Sum, do you know if the Apple Pencil charges faster in the iPad Pro or if you use a little adapter in the wall?
Well, depends on what watt adapter you're using in the wall. If you're, I believe with the iPad Pro, it has a quick charge time. So I think 30 minutes will charge it up fully. I imagine if you charge it with the 12-watt charger that's included with the iPad Pro, you might get a little bit faster boost than that. But again, it's 30 minutes. I'm not sure it's gonna matter. Like, it might drop it from 30 minutes down to 20, maybe. But I mean, you can use the pencil once you've charged it more than 5%. So.
Nice. Yeah. So that's all the questions we have time for. There's a few more left. We'll save those and we'll wrap them up into next week's. But I want to know for now, Georgia, I have a question. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter. It's at Georgia_Dow. And if you're dealing with any anxiety or sleep issues, you can check us out at anxiety-videos.com.
Awesome. What about you, Ren?
You can find me at Settern, S-E-T-T-E-R-N, on Twitter and Instagram, and on iMore.com, and occasionally on The Incomparable, where I do radio shows and talk about Hamilton, because that is my life now.
Awesome. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find all of us at iMore. If you want to send in a question for the next show, just hashtag it AskIMore or email it to podcast@imore.com. You can find the show on iTunes, or you can find the video version at youtube.com/iMoreVideo. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week, and we'll be back next week with more delight and surprise.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.